Welcome back. They'd actually spend money. So welcome back to Therapeutic Thursday, our little 2-hour give or take session. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about dopamine and kind of finding joy in life, things to motivate you. And yeah, sorry, I got distracted. So today, dopamine, I'll give you a little introduction of the purpose of what we're doing is to kind of build a community where we can all come to just from these wee little 2 hours on a Thursday, kind of decompress, talk about things, mental health, whatever's going on. And kind of like a little safe space. And the format is going to be kind of an open forum or closed. Give me 1 second. All right, sorry about that. Anyways, it's going to be kind of an open or closed forum type discussion eventually, where you can come, kind of air a grievance or something that's troubling you, something you just want to talk about. You can then ask for just me to respond. If you're just looking for like my insight, opinion, whatever, or you can basically ask me in the chat. And we can all chime in, have discourse, talk about it, discuss. With that, though, anything that's, too, like anything mean, harsh, cruel to anybody, it won't be tolerated in this 2-hour block session. This isn't meant to negatively critique other people, or basically be an asshole. This is meant for everybody to kind of have like a good little 2-hour break and discuss things. But until we get to that point and have that community to where we can have a consistent conversation to last the entire 2 hours, this will start as kind of a pseudo podcast, where I'll just be talking about things dealing with mental health, psychology, your brain, and tips and tools to kind of try to live a more purposeful or optimistic or whatever the case may be life for you. And yeah, that's where we're going to start. This is in no way replacement for therapy. For professional help, if you do have any serious condition, disorder, anything like that, 100% go seek a licensed therapist or psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm not there yet, so it's not my I'm not legally or anything allowed to diagnose, give protocol, anything like that. So anything in this podcast session at the moment is going to be strictly opinion, anecdotes, experience, and scientific backing, as much as can be researched to certain extents, but in no way is it protocol specific to people. It's just a general protocol if we talk about any tips or strategies. And in no way a diagnosis or anything like that. It's just conversation. And yeah, even if or when I am licensed, I legally can't in this way, HIPAA and everything else, help people individually with protocols. I can just talk about things, which is what we're doing. So anyways, let's get started unless anybody wants to talk about anything specific. Currently, we're going to get into dopamine. We're going to talk about what it is, what its effect on in your brain, your physiological effects, neurological, cognitive, all of that, and how to. That's why I love how BetterHelp thinks they're allowed to exist. Now they pretend to make other people like the way they do. I mean, not to get too into that, because I'm not fully. I don't know the full ins and outs of the company and everything, but I think BetterHelp is within its means. It's just a conveyor belt of therapists. There's no public information, or their therapy sessions aren't public. So they're still following all the protocols, or like HIPAA and everything. So I don't know what would make you say that it's not allowed to exist. I think it's just an online platform, an advertised platform for therapy. In the terms of service, it says it's not actually therapy. Really? I mean, I've looked into getting a job there. Once I get that, you're not saying they're not allowed to exist. You're saying that they're not allowed to give actual therapy. But all of their employees are licensed therapists or psychologists. When I was looking at their hiring requirements, because once I get licensed, I thought maybe I could do that as like a part-time gig. That it requires 2 to 3 years experience in the field, and you have to be licensed. So it's interesting to me that I guess it's not therapy. They aren't legally allowed to do real changes. That's interesting. I mean, I'll have to find out more about it myself. I've only looked into the getting a job there portion, not the ins and outs of what it is. So what you're saying is basically they're doing what I'm doing individually and suggesting general protocols, but they can't subscribe or ask a patient to do the actual protocol. They can just be like, well, what works with most people is this, wink wink, nudge nudge, because it's legally not therapy. That's it's interesting. I didn't know that about that. Like I said, I only looked at the getting the job portion. I didn't look at the the actual other side of it. But anyways, let's get back to dopamine. So let's understand what it is. We've talked a lot about dopamine in the past. This is week 6, week 7. We've been doing this almost 2 months now. So we've talked a lot about dopamine. I mean, it is a super important neurotransmitter. But we're just going to get more into the nitty gritty and the specifics of dopamine by itself, because it's usually been talking about dopamine lumped in with other neurotransmitters or hormones. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, which means it's a chemical messenger that transmits signals into the brain, or in the brain and other areas of the body. It plays several crucial roles, including involvement in reward, motivation, memory, attention, and even regulating your body movements. You can think of dopamine as the brain's feel-good chemical, as well as like endorphins. When you achieve something pleasurable, such as eating your favorite food, dopamine is released, making you feel good and encouraging you to repeat that behavior. So before we had talked about trying to include when you're building up goals or when you're trying to build up momentum. For every small goal, give yourself a small reward, like an equivalent reward, whether it's eating like a scoop of ice cream, like I'm going to study for 30 minutes and then I'm going to have a scoop of ice cream right after. Rewarding the behavior of studying, and it has to be, for your brain to really connect it, it does need to be quick. Like you study and then you go get that ice cream. But doing that dopamine release gives you reinforcement to keep studying or to go back to doing that and stuff like that. But now let's talk about how dopamine is created. Dopamine is produced in several areas of the brain, but most notably in the substantia nigra. and the ventral tegmental area, or VTA for short. These areas are part of what we call the brain's reward system. So we're going to go into the neurological perspective. So to understand dopamine from a neurological perspective, we need to look at the major dopamine pathways in the brain. There are 3 primary pathways that we will focus on today: the mesolimbic pathway, the mesocortical pathway, and the my brain just died on that word. I'm gonna mispronounce this word. Nigrostriatal pathway. The mesolimbic pathway, this pathway is often referred to as the reward pathway. It's heavily involved in our experiences of pleasure and reward. You know, whenever you do something that feels good, such as eating that piece of chocolate, your ice cream, whatever, dopamine is released along with this pathway, reinforcing the behavior and making you want to do it again. It's interesting. We could talk more about that later. So yeah, reinforcing behavior, making you want to do it again. So then there's the mesocortical pathway. It's linked to the prefrontal cortex and is involved in cognitive control, motivation, and emotional response. It's crucial in decision making and managing social behaviors. The nigrostriatal pathway. Again, I'm butchering that. This pathway plays a key role in regulating movement. Dopamine produced in this pathway helps control voluntary movements and is crucial for motor control. So when dopamine levels are balanced, these pathways function well the way they're supposed to. However, if dopamine levels are too high or too low, too high or too low, problems can arise. So when dopamine is too high, excess dopamine, especially in the mesolimbic pathway, is often linked to conditions like schizophrenia. Symptoms can include hallucinations and delusions because of the overstimulation in certain brain areas. If I'm not mistaken, that's also for like Parkinson's and stuff like that. It can... I need to lower this just a hair. It messes with those as well. And then when it's too low, insufficient dopamine, particularly in the nigrostriatal pathway, is associated with Parkinson's. And this can result in motor symptoms like tremors, stiffness, and difficulty with movement. So yeah, too high, you're thinking schizophrenia, psychosis, delusions, hallucinations, things like that. Too low, your motor response is lower, your memory retention. So Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, stuff like that goes away. So dopamine is super crucial in those areas. But now we're going to talk about the physiological perspective. From a physiological perspective, dopamine doesn't just affect the brain, it impacts the entire body. One is hormone regulation. Dopamine plays a role in regulating hormones. For instance, it inhibits the release of prolactin from the pituitary gland, which is important for milk production in women. Balanced dopamine levels are crucial for proper hormonal function. Circulation and heart function. Dopamine has a direct effect in the cardiovascular system. It can help regulate blood flow by dilating blood vessels and increasing urine output by the kidneys, which helps control blood pressure. The next is digestion. Dopamine also influences the digestive system. It affects the gastrointestinal motility, meaning it regulates the movement of the intestines, which is crucial for digestion. So physiologically, too much dopamine can lead to an overreactive system, while too little can do the inverse, the underactive. Both extremes can have significant impacts on overall health and well-being. Now we're going to talk about the cognitive perspective. So dopamine plays a crucial role in several cognitive functions, such as attention, memory, and problem solving. So specifically your attention and focus, dopamine helps regulate attention and focus by influencing the prefrontal cortex. Optimal levels of dopamine enable us to concentrate better and stay on task. Memory. Dopamine is essential for memory formation and retrieval. It helps enhance the encoding of new memories and recalling existing ones. Low dopamine levels can impair these processes, leading to difficulties in learning and memory retention. So again, low, you're thinking Parkinson's, you're thinking Alzheimer's, dementia, forgetfulness, amnesia, things like that. You're not retaining memories, you're not creating new ones. And there's a lot of, I don't think I added these like reasons why you would have low or high, which I probably should have now in hindsight. But I didn't add why you would have low or why you would have high. But, over rewarding and overstimulation can create a high tolerance of dopamine. And when you have that for a prolonged period of time, so you're constantly overstimulating, it can impact your absorption and creation of dopamine, which later on in life can give you, can tire out your nervous system and help lead to those deficiencies. People who take cocaine a lot, you're hitting such a high dopamine release, and if that's for a prolonged period of time, it eats away at your brain. You get a lot of memory loss. It's not an ideal situation. So that was memory. Motivation and reward. Perhaps the most well-known roles of dopamine is motivation and reward. It drives us to pursue goals and rewards. When you achieve something significant, your brain releases dopamine, reinforcing behavior and encouraging you to strive for more. As we've said a million times, associating dopamine with learning, with more adverse tasks, can help you develop more resistance to adversity. It can help you look at a challenge and think to yourself in a positive way of how am I going to overcome this, and then feel good about yourself afterwards. It makes it to where you're not looking at the problem and thinking dang, there's this problem and now I can't do what I want to do or whatever. Now we're going to talk practical tips to boost your dopamine. Now the usual suspects are the same kind of bread and butter we have talked about for a long time. Pretty much every session that I've had an actual itinerary and layout in order to boost the said thing that we're talking about, your motivation, your dopamine, your serotonin, all of the stuff we've talked about, getting out of a rut. It's pretty much the same base tips, which are going to be exercise, going to be meditation, it's going to be diet, it's going to be sleep. Those are the essential things that are a consistent throughout any and every one of these situations that is causing you low levels of these hormones and stuff like that. Now, obviously, sometimes it's you need medication because your body just has certain deficiencies. But overall, the main advice and main thing to boost all of your mood, your dopamine, your serotonin, your GABA, lower your cortisol, all of that stuff, is exercise, sleep, diet. My brain just died. Those are the main ones. Meditation. But I'm going to give a little bit of a different one now, since we've already talked so much about the others. So some practical tips to boost dopamine outside of the exercise, the sleep, the diet, the mindfulness, meditation. Listen to music. Music can significantly boost dopamine levels. Listening to your favorite tunes can enhance mood and motivation by stimulating dopamine release in the brain. So listen to some music, depending on your levels of focus, attention, stuff like that, listen to music while you're studying. If you can associate that good beat, whatever, to whatever you're studying, do that. I would be curious, because there's a thing called cue learning, situational learning, locational learning, all of that, where if you're learning it while listening to the music, sometimes to recall that information, you need to be listening to music. So I would be, depending on your personality type and how that affects you, I would be curious to understand that. To like, man, I studied so much better with music, but when I get to the test, I don't remember anything. See if you can kind of like take that test theoretically, like find a test bank while listening to the music and see how you do. I just feel like that'd be an interesting experiment you could do with yourself to see if you cue, situational, locational, whatever, learn. So listen to music. It's a normal, easy way. Another one, you're going to hear a lot of Huberman and a lot of other people talk about it, and it's a craze. Cold showers. Taking cold showers has been shown to increase dopamine levels. The sudden change in temperature can trigger the release of dopamine, leaving you feeling refreshed and invigorated. The cold water also, it spikes your cortisol, which again, cortisol on its own is necessary. It's a healthy, good thing in your body. It's just whenever it's chronic or elongated levels, prolonged levels, that it becomes an issue for your health. But cortisol is good. But that cold gives you that shock to your body. So you're releasing you're releasing stress hormones, cortisol, and remember, dopamine is both a 50-50. When you have high levels of stress and anxiety, alertness, you have an increase in dopamine in certain areas of your body, the motor skills, and in some ways the cognitive function. But it's not going through that the reward pathway. It's not going through your mesolimbic pathway as much, so it decreases that. You're not feeling great about being in that stressful environment, but when you take that cold shower, you get that alertness, you get that release of cortisol and dopamine. So it's a good way to like start your day or whatever. This is a cold shower, or people were fascinated with ice baths. If you don't want to do an ice bath, you can get like a salad bowl, fill it like 20-30%, and then put that in the freezer, and then whenever you're ready, fill the rest of it with water and just dip your face in up to the neck, and try to do that a couple times for as long as you can. I mean, sometimes it's like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, but even that can be enough. So we gotta listen to music, we got cold showers. What's up, Burnaby? Am I late? A little bit. This was gonna be a short, I guess, lecture podcast session, because I'm already nearing the end. But we could talk about whatever and reiterate things. But we're talking about dopamine. We're talking about, we went into the science of it, neurological, cognitive, or I guess neurochemical, cognitive, and physiological. One segment I should have added was what causes low and what causes high. I could probably add that as we're talking. But yeah, so now we're at practical tips to boost dopamine. How do I get it? How do I know if I have too much or too little? We'll discuss that then. So listening to music, cold showers. The next is just social interaction. Spending time with friends and loved ones can boost dopamine. Social interaction and positive relationships naturally enhance dopamine levels, promoting feelings of happiness and well-being. Again, have a couple cornerstone people in your life that aren't consistently draining. I mean, relationships will drain you every now and then, but consistently draining, negative, or making you feel bad about yourself, like cut that out. As I've said before, I don't believe in full cold turkey. I believe in moderation. But if you're constantly with people that put you down, maybe you shouldn't be constantly around those people. So social interaction, super important to boosting dopamine levels, and mood and finding joy in life. If you have too little, you have depression. If you have too much, people call you weird. True. You have too little dopamine. Depression, serotonin's more related to the depression part of it, but yeah, I mean, dopamine, too little, depression, memory loss, Parkinson's, stuff like that. Too high, people call you weird, people call you crazy, schizophrenic, psychosis, all of that, hallucinations. But so we have social interaction. The next one, unless you live in like Seattle or the UK, sunlight exposure. Getting up and getting some sunlight can increase dopamine production. Sunlight exposure stimulates the production of vitamin D, which is linked to higher dopamine levels. Aim for at least 15 to 30 minutes of sunlight each day. If you can, wake up. If you have a patio or just, if you can open the door and go outside, enjoy your morning coffee or your morning drink outside for 15 minutes. Just that. Whatever you're gonna. If you wake up and you read a book, you wake up and for the first 30 minutes, even if you doom scroll for the first 30 minutes, doom scroll outside. You would be amazed by doing that consistently how much better you'll feel. Just that simple thing. And to go along the vitamin D production, we've talked about deficiencies in the body, feeding the body the appropriate things so it can create the appropriate chemicals and your hormones for your body to run optimally. A lot of people actually have depression-like symptoms purely, well, maybe not, maybe purely is a strong word, but a majority of the reason is they have low vitamin D levels. Because vitamin D is associated with production of dopamine, which is your feel-good chemical, your reward chemical, or one of them, the main driver. So vitamin D is super important. That I think for a male, you should be between 30 or 40 IUs or units or whatever the hell the biometric or whatever, not biometric, but the metric is in your blood. And for the past like 5 years, and that's just since I've been testing my blood panel, I've had my levels at like 19 to 22. So I'm at a vitamin D deficiency. And, if you go to your doctor and you tell them that you have like low motivation, low energy levels, you're always tired, this and that, one of the first things they're going to should recommend is getting a blood panel and testing your vitamin D levels. And then, maybe your iron and I mean, that should be a part of it as well. But like your iron can play a factor in energy levels and stuff. But vitamin D, super, super important. So again, major thing to do when you wake up and once you feel ready to get out of bed and stuff like that, whether you doom scroll, whether you read some articles, go watch a video, like your normal routine is watching a video, it's having a cup of coffee, drinking, a 16-ounce glass of water, do that, but outside in the sunlight, just for like 15 minutes, 15, 20, 30 minutes. That's it. And then you can come back in and do the rest of your day. You just have to do your vitamin D test. You have your papers. Haven't gone to a lab yet though. Gotcha. I mean, I yearly now for the past 5 years get my blood panel done. Now I get my testosterone levels, especially because I'm getting to that age where levels tend to drop. So I get all that: vitamin D, iron, thyroid, of course, glycemic index, all of that. Like I get all of that done once a year because if you have insurance, it's considered as a part of your like physical, your yearly checkup. But if you don't ask for it, then your yearly checkup will just be them hitting your knee with a reflex thing, checking your ear and mouth and your breathing. They'd be like, yeah, you sound good. Your blood pressure, all of that. So you have to ask for it. And it might cost, like for me, my insurance, it costs like an extra $20 for the lab. But, you know, $20 to see areas that you're deficient in is pretty good. You're Canadian, it's free regardless. Why? Good for you. It just might take you a year to get those results. By then, your whole biochemistry could change. So yeah, sunlight exposure, mucho beneficial. The next thing for increasing dopamine and finding joy in life is learning new skills. Engaging in activities that challenge your brain, such as learning a new language or instrument, can boost dopamine. The process of learning and mastering new skills stimulates dopamine production, providing a sense of accomplishment. So if you know, I because of this platform, we're all gamers here. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm learning a new game and then I start grasping the concept of the game and it was hard at first and now it's becoming easier, there's a little sense of like accomplishment. You're like, oh shit, like I was doo-doo at this game and I'm still doo-doo, but I'm less doo-doo. You know what I'm saying? That's a terrible example of it, but learning new skills, overcoming challenges gives you that sense of accomplishment, which boosts your dopamine levels. You know, and that's why we have talked many times about setting achievable goals. You know, a goal should be challenging enough that you have to put forth effort, but not so challenging that it's insurmountable or you just can't achieve it. You know, set realistic goals, a large one, and then smaller ones as measures of accomplishing it. Because when you hit those little milestones, you feel good about yourself. It keeps you motivated. You're releasing dopamine throughout the process of your goal. You can talk to many people who would say that they're very goal oriented. Most of those people, and especially the ones that like you talk to who are successful, whatever, when they achieve their goal, like their big goal, a lot of people talk about they actually get depressed or they lose motivation. They aren't nearly as happy as they thought, like when they got it. And it's because they learn to enjoy the process getting to the goal. So that's why you hear people who have like goals. They're like, oh, well, once I accomplish this is my next goal. Like they always have a goal to achieve because it's not the achievement of the goal. It's the process that keeps them going, that gives them satisfaction throughout. And it's an interesting thing to think about and to research about like when people achieve these goals, how a majority of the time they're like, I thought I would be happier. I thought I would have more joy. Not that they don't have any or anything like that, but they thought they would have more of it. They would be complete. Like I've achieved my goal. I'm done with everything. It's like, no, you know, you start to love the process. You enjoy the little milestones, the getting better, the learning, the adapting. That's what also sparks neuroplasticity, the connection of new neurons, the creation of new neurons, the strengthening of existing neurons. Like it's super important to keep challenging yourself in whatever way. You know, when you get older, maybe it's crossword puzzles and Sudoku. Who knows? But constantly be challenging your brain. So that one, learning new skills. The next one, this is associated with diet, but probiotics. A healthy gut can influence dopamine levels. Probiotics found in foods like yogurt, kefir, and fermented vegetables, kimchi, can promote a healthy gut microbiome, pickles, which in turn supports dopamine production. Again, when we talked about serotonin, 95%, give or take for your own specific body, but up to 95% of your serotonin, your mood regulator, is created in your gut. If you have bad gut health, not only does it affect your serotonin levels, it affects your dopamine levels, which again is directly, indirectly affecting your GABA, it's affecting in the opposite way your norepinephrine and epinephrine, your glutamate. Is it glutamate? My brain's dead. It's one of the glutas. It's affecting all of that. So gut health, super important. So even if you're not taking care of it as much as you should with like nutrition in terms of diet, vegetables, fruits, whatever, at least try to have the appropriate probiotics for your microbiome to be happy and healthy. Unrelated, but if you're diagnosed with a mood disorder, do you think the gut should be managed first? Yeah, we'll sidebar into that. Like, is it all curable? All curable, I wouldn't suggest something that strong of all curable, because everybody has their unique physiological properties to certain extents. Everybody has a baseline to a degree where we all are similar. Define curable. Some are just manageable. Exactly. That's why I'm like curable and all. Those are very strong terms for it. But manageable and stuff like that. The first things, I'm trying to think when I become a therapist and I have to, talk to people. I'm gonna get more training in it, so I could be very off base in how I think. Like 3 years from now, how I think I would approach it might be completely different. But with the knowledge I have right now, what I would first find out is their personality type to an extent, so I know what things I should suggest that are more appetizing, more acceptable by that person. If I get the sense that even if I know it's a good foundational start, that if I start talking about diet first, their brain is going to automatically discredit me and be like, this person is just like every other cookie cutter person, every other therapist I've talked to, blah, blah, blah. Which, I mean, if everybody is saying the same thing about you, maybe it's not them, it's you, but who knows? But in a perfect world where people didn't have these defenses and mechanisms and stuff like that, or self-judgments of like, well, I know I have a bad diet and I'm insecure about that, and then someone's telling me to just, all my problems will be solved with a diet. That's not what we're saying. But in a perfect world where people just took advice for what it was and would follow through with it after some thought, I would first recommend, yes, get your diet right and start moving your body. Because again, your gut, if it's depression, since serotonin is the highest association with depression, like your levels, I would first start with the gut personally. Again, I would, in the real world, have to see how that person would take that information and where I should start, because there's a heuristic and a fallacy logic that there's this TED talk, I forgot who did it and how long ago, but the speaker started with information that was just, he sounded very smart, which is a heuristic in itself, a title heuristic. I forgot the proper terms, but basically a title heuristic. He was like, I'm this and I'm a lead in this department, So just giving that gives that sense of, I'm going to listen to this person. And he said in the beginning, well, the fallacy part's a little later, but the heuristic of it was, he started with something that was like unequivocally factual. You cannot deny it. And he sounded very eloquent and smart when he said it. And then the rest of everything else he said, while sounding smart and confident, he made up. He wrote it down. It wasn't off the top of his head, but he made up the information. And then at the end, he was like, how many people believe me? And everybody raised their hand. Why deny it? Wait, why deny what? What are you talking about? What are you saying? What are you talking about? Anyways, so it's building that trust in the beginning. His credentials are irrelevant to reality. It's not irrelevant to reality. I mean, okay, it's irrelevant to reality, but it's not irrelevant to perception and to a heuristic. It's not irrelevant to that. If I say I'm a doctor, you know how many people are successful, whether it's moral or not, or what, not ethics, or whatever you want to call it, of they're a doctor in something, but they say I'm a doctor, and then they give advice on something that is not their expertise. People who don't do the research, just because they say they're a doctor, are going to listen to it and take it as fact. So it's not irrelevant. The credentials aren't irrelevant. It creates a sense of hierarchy, I guess, and it creates a sense of, well, this person knows what they're talking about. So again, maybe to you, because you might have that skeptic mindset, credentials don't mean anything, which, you know, I would argue you have a point. I know a lot of dumb doctors. My ex-roommate, he's going to orthopedics. He's going to be an orthopedic surgeon, and he is grade A bro. I wouldn't trust him because I know him. I wouldn't trust him to perform surgery. Well, I don't know. Maybe I would, because like I think he has a good understanding of his job, but he's kind of dumb. So I agree with you in the sense of, like, yes, credentials theoretically. I would ask more about, get more details about that. But to the average person, again, the heuristic is, if you have the credentials, you already have this level of trust no matter what. And so there's also a fallacy that on the flip end, if you say one incorrect thing in the beginning, people will automatically assume that everything else you have to say is BS, or that you made it up. So there's a heuristic of authority, a heuristic of title, where if you start with something factual and smart sounding and you have a title, you develop that trust, you can say whatever you want and they're going to believe you. On the flip side, there's the fallacy. And the fallacy is on the other the heuristic is your judgment on that person. The fallacy is your judgment on the statements to an extent. Where again, if I say something that is just incorrect at the start, you're not going to believe, even if I say the most groundbreaking, factual, smart stuff after that statement, you discredit everything because of the first false statement, the first falsity. So anyways, we were talking about how I would go about, you know, describing if someone, or like where I would go if someone said they have depression or depression-like symptoms. The reason I was saying about the heuristics fallacy is I would need to develop the trust first. I would need to figure out their personality types and what they take to, what they don't take to, how defensive they get in certain areas, to give them a protocol or advice that I know would work to a degree. I wouldn't ever know fully something would work, but something that I feel like they could achieve that doesn't press their defensive buttons, that can give them a sense of like, oh yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of truth to what they're saying. And then I would go into fundamentally those things. But if I know that person in the beginning is a very logical thinking person, they're not, whatever the case may be, then I would probably personally with depression start with the gut. And I understand, because it's chemical deficiencies, that there's the like revolving door, the catch-22, right? Like the chicken or the egg. If I have bad gut health, it's not really chicken or the egg, because if you have bad gut health, there's a start to that usually. But if I have bad gut health and I have low serotonin levels as a result, which as a result is giving me depression, but now I'm depressed, so I have low motivation, low mood regulation, and now someone's telling me to do something that is not habitual for me and is a little adverse because I enjoy eating what I like to eat, and now you're telling me I can't. If I have low mood regulation already, it's going to be hard for me to develop those patterns, those habits. And the reason I wanted and want to become a psychologist and therapist opposed to a psychiatrist, I don't really want to go to med school, to be honest. But aside from that, is I'm not the type of person that likes to, like, I wouldn't feel satisfied personally just diagnosing and prescribing people. I know there's a lot more money in that, thanks to the pharmaceutical industry. There's a lot more money in that, and there's a necessity to it. I'm not saying it's not necessary. There is absolutely a necessity to certain drugs, certain prescriptions for people with certain deficiencies. Because there's absolutely, to our known sciences, no legitimate way for them to produce what needs to be produced to get them on the right track without the assistance of that. So, I would look at gut health first. In a perfect patient, perfect world, look at gut health first, and to help them, if they're having a hard time developing those healthy habits, then I would probably have to send them to a psychiatrist so they could prescribe them some sort of SSRI to some extent, just so they can have the motivation, even if it's artificial, the motivation to develop those positive habits so they can wean off and get off of the prescription because they have the healthy habits, and now their body is starting to produce the appropriate neurochemicals, hormones. That would be how I would approach it personally. Again, in 3 years, when I've done even more schooling and I'm licensed, there could be information that I just don't know about right now that I might revisit this and be like, oh yeah, no, this is how I would do it. But to where I'm at, to my knowledge, that is how I would approach that situation. But that's why I'm, still learning. Still a lot to learn, still a lot to do. But anyways, so in terms of topic, that's what we were talking about with probiotics, gut health. The next way to increase dopamine levels, or another way to increase dopamine levels, to find some joy in life, is massage therapy. Now, this one can be a little costly, or to ask a friend, maybe. But massage therapy. Getting a massage can reduce stress and increase dopamine levels. Physical touch and relaxation during a massage stimulate dopamine release, helping to improve mood and reduce anxiety. So whether, again, it's a friend, a loved one, whatever, or you can afford it, massages, if you react well to them, can be a great way to reduce stress and increase dopamine. When I get massages, maybe I just don't have the physiological awareness in certain regards, of the physical awareness. But some people get done with a massage and like, oh, I feel great. Oh my God, this, that. I've had a massage like 5 times in my life, and the massage itself feels good, and I know they're getting out knots, and I can feel a little better after. But after I get an hour-long massage, I almost don't feel any change. I enjoy the massage, but after, I'm not like, oh my God, I feel so much better, or like this or that. So for me, massages might not release as much dopamine as it could in others. I can notice, benefit for sure. I like them, but I don't get the same whew, I'm ready to take on the day that other people can get from massages. But if they work for you, massage is a great way. Another one is something we've talked about when it comes to like reducing anxiety and finding motivation and stuff like that is gratitude practice. Practice writing things down you're thankful for. That can increase your dopamine. Focusing on positive aspects of your life stimulates dopamine release, enhancing feelings of happiness and contentness, or contentment. So, it's not like we have to be at Thanksgiving every night and be like, I'm thankful for this and I'm thankful for this. But to an extent, yeah, like find the things that you are thankful for. And, inevitably there's probably going to be, as you're going down the thankful things, there's going to be some, thoughts in the back of your head of, things that are going wrong or things that you aren't thankful for. Like, when you have those thoughts, again, don't listen to them and turn the thought around to something else, or turn that specific thought around. Like we said with job interviews, if I'm going for a job and I get an interview that I know the job itself I'm not really qualified for, before I do the interview, I have two main ways of thinking, right? I can either beat myself up and be like, well, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I'm not qualified. I'm not going to get it, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. They're asking for this credential, or they're asking for this experience that I don't have, and blah, 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 blah. I can think that, or I can think it and be like, oh man, I don't have the experience, or I don't have this skill set. But I've learned things that are much more challenging in life, so that should be a piece of cake. I don't have experience in that, but I have experience in this, and this is how that's relatable. Like you turn that thought around, and while you might be beating yourself up with factual things like, I'm not qualified, I'm not this, you'd be like, but I'm smart, but I learn quick, but this, but that, but I have experience doing this. Well, I don't have experience directly doing that. This is in a similar aspect. So you find the good, you find the positive, you find what you are capable of and can improve on, and that will help your mindset in those situations. So gratitude practice is kind of in that same light of like, you're finding the things that you're grateful for, the things that you do have. Like, you know what, the typical foundational one of like, I have my health, I have air in my lungs, I have food in my stomach, and I have a roof over my head. For some people, that's a big deal. I mean, for everybody, essentially, that's a big deal. But I mean, for people who that is a potential threat of loss, that is actually really important. So it might sound cheesy to most people who are like, I mean, I've always had a roof over my head, I've always had food in my belly, whatever the case may be. You could overlook that gratitude. But for some people, especially if in some regards, in their minds, that's all they have, they don't have much going for them in their mind. I believe to certain extents, everybody has potential to be something. It doesn't have to be the next president. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be any of that. But everybody, it doesn't need to be the best of the field, but everybody has potential to be something. They just need to allow themselves to believe it. And also, there's a lot of nuance with that. They need to have the tools, they need to have the support system, which can be lacking in certain things, certain areas. So it's not just about potential, it's about opportunity, and it's about resources, of course. But, some people in their minds, they might think like that is the crucials. Like that is something they're grateful for. They have a roof over their head. They have food in their stomach. They have all of these things. And practicing that gratitude can give you that good feeling of like, this is what I have in life so far, or this is what's going well. I should be happy, not content, or not necessarily satisfied, because you don't want to get rid of your drive to do better and get more, but you should be happy with where you're at and strive to do better. So gratitude practice is a good tool for increasing your dopamine, having you realize things aren't as bad as you think. And even if you think things are bad and then you do your gratitude practice and you think to yourself, wow, I only have like 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I have a million things that are going bad. There's ways around that I'm not astute in. I'm a little ignorant of, so I don't want to speak too much into that, but I understand if you have that thought process, the gratitude can turn into something more detrimental, because then you start looking at the flip side more. But there's ways around that as well. I'm just currently not in a position to give advice on that. So gratitude practice, the next one, mindful eating, which again goes along with the diet and probiotic thing, but it just further emphasizes like the importance of what you're fueling your body with, because again, your body needs certain nutrients, vitamins and minerals to create the neurochemicals and hormones that regulate your body and regulate your mood, regulate your mind, your cognitive process. It can't just create them out of thin air. Some actually your body miraculously does create in essence out of thin air, or it transforms, I don't know, but it uses something else that's meant for something else, but can use that to create other things where your body is deficient in. But overall, your body just can't create things. Mass creates mass, right? You need something to create something. So, mindful eating. Pay attention to what you eat, and how you eat can influence your dopamine levels. Eating slowly, savoring each bite, and choosing foods rich in tyrosine, like almonds, avocados, and bananas, can support dopamine production. So tyrosine looks to be one of the nutrients that helps support dopamine production. But yeah, enjoy your food. I don't know, it's a catch-22, because we've talked about this as well. Enjoy your food and find food that you can enjoy, but you also have to understand, we as a society have created this idea that food is meant to be pleasurable. You're meant to enjoy food, when in reality, bare bones, biologically, physiologically, food at its base is meant to fuel your body. Regardless of how it tastes, regardless of how you think it tastes, food and water and drinks are meant to fuel your body. That is priority number 1, regardless of your pleasure. You should be thinking of food first as fuel for the body, and have foods that are pleasurable. But only eating for pleasure causes eating disorders and a plethora of other things. Have your definition of food, change your definition of food. It is meant as fuel for the body to create the things necessary for you to function properly. That is the purpose of eating. It's not to have food gasms. Or it shouldn't be. Anyways. But there's a place for that, you know? Eating is to make me happy. I mean, and so under DSM-5, but no, under any diagnosis, if anything is a disorder, if it affects your daily life and your health in a prolonged way. So I'm not talking about you specifically, no, but like if people are like, well, I eat to make myself happy at the detriment of my health, then in some diagnosable ways you have an eating disorder. Because you are affecting, you're detrimenting your actual health, pleasure seeking. But that's a topic for another discussion. And I know you're just kind of like throwing stuff out there. So after mindful eating, the next one and the last one we're going to talk about is visualization and positive thinking. Visualize your goals, and practicing positive thinking can boost dopamine. Imagining successful outcomes and maintaining an optimistic mindset can stimulate dopamine release, enhancing motivation and well-being. Again, you want to have realistic why can I not say that word right now? Visualizations. You want to have realistic ones and goals. You want to have realistic positive thinking and imagining successful outcomes. If I go to sleep, or I'm going to sleep, and I just think to myself, I'm going to have $1 million. A, that's not specific enough in terms of like how I'm going to attain that or anything like that. But B, at this point in my life, like I could say, yeah, in X amount of time, that's where I want to be. Then I got to create the steps to get there. But actually having, like, imagining successful outcomes that are realistic and attainable, I think is very important. Especially for, again, boosting dopamine, giving you joy in life. When we talked about our motivation episode, lack of purpose. Sometimes you can be a highly motivated individual on the regular, and if you don't have a purpose or a goal, something to achieve, you mistake your lack of direction as you have no motivation. But that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. If I don't have direction, but I'm full of motivation for what? I'm going to think to myself, well, I'm not getting anything done. I must be severely unmotivated to do things. When in reality, it's twofold. That is either the case. You are just somebody who is typically unmotivated. You have low levels of something. Or in some people's cases, you're a highly motivated person, but you have nothing to put that motivation towards. So it manifests as, I'm lazy, I don't do anything, I'm unmotivated. You just have no sense of direction. You don't know where you're going, and that's super important, especially for us humans. We're so goal oriented, or we're so like, we want purpose. What is the purpose of life? What's the meaning? What's the purpose of the universe? That was you for the last 20 years talking about you have motivation typically, but you've had no direction. Still is me. Or that even with direction, you are just typically unmotivated. There's some imbalance that needs correcting, or adjusting. But yeah, so visualize, positive thinking, typically unmotivated. Gotcha. Visualize, figure out what it is you want to do, and it doesn't have to be like for the rest of your life, but like what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to achieve? Like, what would, at the end of the day,
make you feel some level of satisfaction of like, yes, I'm on the right path. I'm starting to do the things that I know to be successful. Find that for yourself. And especially in today's day and age, there are so many resources, so many tools, so many ways that you can create a realistic game plan to start achieving that. If you have a hard goal, then the work is going to be hard. And if you're typically an unmotivated person, you gotta find things that are gonna be rewarding enough for you to get on track. And start small. Start small. No matter, even if you think that the step you're about to take is of zero importance because it's so small, so minuscule, do it. The smaller the better to start off with, because then there's no major change in your habit, your routine, but it's just small enough that it compounds and you start really taking bigger and bigger and bigger changes. And like I said, journaling is a super strong tool that you can use, so you can look back and again be like, I used to wake up and doom scroll for 2 hours. Now I wake up and doom scroll for 1 hour, and that other hour I'm out in the sun, I'm taking a cold shower, I'm drinking the water I need to drink, I'm making a healthy breakfast in that other hour. So I am that much further along to becoming the person I want to become than I was however long ago. But if I just look at it then, be like, I'm still not where I want to be, that's not going to help you. So you need to look at it from where you were when you started, where you are now, and those baby steps. Just waking up and doom scrolling for 10 minutes less every day or every other day, or even if it's as slow as for 10 minutes less a week, to the point where in 6 weeks you're down an hour. Just something as small as that is helping you become the better version of yourself. Just that. So start as small as you need to. If you're someone who is highly motivated and you like the challenge and you just don't have the direction or purpose, once you find it, take as big of a step as you feel you can sustainably do. But if you're an unmotivated person, or even if you're a motivated person but you're skeptical, you're whatever, start as small as you need to. Nothing is too small, because each small step, again, gets you in the direction you want to go. Every small step. Even if you don't think it's related. Like, I want to become a doctor. Okay, well, these are the disciplines, the work ethic, the things that doctors need. If discipline and routine or whatever is something I need for this career, let me start instilling things in my life that create discipline. Let me brush my teeth every day. Some people don't. Or at least once a day, whatever. I'm going to drink the water. I'm going to, I usually eat 4, unhealthy foods a day. I'm going to just eat 3. Those small corners are building your discipline. They're building your work ethic, so you can tackle harder and larger adversities or hurdles or challenges. Kind of went off on another little tangent there, but that's usual here. So, there you have it. There's another set of practical tips to help boost your dopamine levels, find more joy in life, maybe help you find a sense of direction. We do have other episodes previously on the YouTubes of talking about motivation, some ways finding purpose in your life. Very base talks right now. We didn't go into like full detail today, since we've talked about dopamine a lot and like its importance. Today I went a little more in depth on specifically dopamine, instead of having it be a quick topic conversation about stress and about this, today's whole conversation was about like boosting dopamine and stuff like that. There's still so much more to talk about. Like I said, I now that I think about it, I should have added, causes of low dopamine, causes of high dopamine, and what it can look like how it can manifest in your behaviors. I should have added a behavioral section. So there's a lot more information that we in past that we could have taken as well, which just means I have more talking points in the future. I probably won't do dopamine again next week or the week after. Of course, we're always going to talk about it because it's integral to your mental health. But maybe in like 3-4 weeks, I'll talk more specifically of like what low dopamine looks like, what high dopamine looks like, how you get high and low, how it manifests in your behaviors and stuff like that. It's literally integral to just living. I mean, yeah, you could say that about a lot of stuff, but yeah, it's the point I'm trying to make is I'm always going to be talking about dopamine. It's just maybe not as specific as what dopamine is, and its individual importance overall. It'll just be the importance of that topic. So we'll get into more. Again, if there's a topic of conversation that anybody would like me to talk about next week or the following week or whatever, you can put a suggestion of like, I want a discussion about like, just because we're following along this easy conversation, but about serotonin. Like, let's dig deeper into just serotonin, even though we kind of did. Actually, we definitely did. But maybe GABA, I don't know, glutamate, whatever. Like, let's go dig deeper into this specific, because we've talked a lot about broad things. Like, again, developing motivation. Well, you need to increase dopamine, associate dopamine with heart attacks, this, that, the other. But then what is dopamine, right? Like, really, we know it's a reward chemical, but like, how do we get more of it? What does it look like? Blah, blah, blah. We can continue having those conversations as well, more in-depth, nuanced in the bits and pieces. Or, again, we can continue to talk about broader topics of like, how to get over fears, phobias. We can talk about just typical, like, normal psychology things of like mirroring, like the Bobo doll experiment. How do we learn? Nurture versus nature versus nurture, like that kind of stuff. Those are all up for topics as well, not just disorders or in theory the negatives of like, I'm depressed, I have anxiety, I have no low dopamine, I have this. We just talk about learning, how people learn, how people develop. We could talk about maturation, the maybe not as cray-cray in modern times as Sigmund Freud with hypersexuality, sexual, what was psychosexual, thought process. Every one of our influences is influenced for sexual motives as a root cause of our relationship with our mother or father. It's not as crazy as that, but he did. He was a pioneer in some regards, and very, very, very influential. And his like diagram for early development of like your phallic stage or this stage or that stage, while he made it very sexual, is actually still used today, just in more modernized ways, because he was on to something, clearly. Neither exists. Sounds about right. Sorry about it. Well, I don't. Yep. No, I'm not even gonna go into that. But Yeah, so there's so much more we could talk about. I mean, it's never ending, constantly developing. Um, there's so many more advancements in neuroscience that they're able to actually link scientifically causes or reasons, whatever, for things going on mentally based off of the neurological studies we've done. One of the biggest knocks on psychology as a whole is a lot of people considered it just a pseudoscience because it can never be proven 100%. Although in theory, to make something actually scientific, is it to make it actually scientific? I think it's to make something actually scientific, you have to be able to make a case as to why it doesn't work. Is that right? Something about that. Like basically, there has to be a way to disprove it, even if it's not disprovable. Like, in the sense of it could come true 100% of the time, but there has to be a way to try to disprove it in order for it to be scientific. Doesn't mean it has to be disprovable, just that there's a way to disprove it, which is like a weird thing, but I understand it to a degree. But yeah, since psychology doesn't have that, and since everybody's not cut from the same cookie sheet, it was always kind of, to certain extents, viewed as like a pseudoscience. But now with the rise of technology, AI, this, that, the other, neuroscientists and neurological doctors, whatever, are finding in their research evidence now, like scientific evidence, to back or to disprove certain psychological or psychiatry driven ideologies or diagnoses and stuff like that. So that's very fascinating. We'll see what happens in the next 5-10 years as well. Speaking of dopamine, since this was the topic we were talking about, there was a very interesting podcast with Andrew Huberman. As you can tell, I'm a big fan. Where I think it was his lab was working with like Alzheimer's, I think. And I would assume because it dealt with memory, cognition, and learning. But it could have also been Parkinson's, dementia, which is just further along. But regardless, he was finding ways, or he was finding that when you stimulated dopamine production through like shocks, that even people with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, were able to form and create new memories and retain that memory. And I forgot if it was he hypothesized or they did testing on it when it came to learning. But if you stimulate someone's dopaminergic pathways, like what I said, mesolimbic and all that systems, mesolimbic, mesocortical, nigrostriatal, you stimulate those systems to stimulate production of dopamine while they're learning a task. And it was either the hypothesis or he found it to be the case overall, but it increased learning capacity, learning speed, and memory retention like tenfold. Like, it was a ridiculous expedite of learning, which is terrible phrasing I just said, but just a high increase of your learning potential and capacity in a shorter period of time. And then he did start mentioning, the military was curious about it as well, and you could formulate as to why. I would hypothesize of, if they were finding that you could reliably and safely, I would hope, stimulate these dopaminergic systems while you're learning, so you're learning at a more rapid rate and you're retaining it. It's not like Limitless, the pill in the movie. You take it and you're super smart, but then as soon as it wears off, you're dumb. It was retained knowledge. Like even when the systems weren't being stimulated and they were at a normal like homeostasis, a normal baseline, their baseline of education for that topic was increased by a lot. So of course, you know, you could hypothesize the military being interested, trying to create super soldiers mentally. I don't believe there's any physical, you know, well, there's not no physical benefit, but like in terms of super soldier, but super brain soldier, you know, if you could cram 10 years of knowledge into somebody in just 2 years, 1 year, because they're learning at such an accelerated rate, it's a scary thought. But then again, we have Neuralink, so you don't even need to take a year. You just put it in your brain, and now you have access to all that information, right? Although I think that's a misconception, right? From what I know of Neuralink, which is not a lot, it's not a information pathway to you, at least yet. Because the testing that I've seen done is more your brain communicating with the computer. You think the thought, and the computer, the game, the whatever, translates that thought. It's not my brain is connected to the internet, so now I just think of a question and boom, I have the answer in my brain. That might be where they want to go with it, which but yeah, so dopamine, it's crazy how powerful it is, because I mean it's one of the strongest things for your prefrontal cortex and cognitive ability, for memory, learning, retention, all of that. So if you can find ways to increase your dopamine naturally while studying or while learning a new thing, finding the joy in doing that, you are going to be much better off. And I feel like that's common sense to some degree. If you oh hey, Nosy Bonk, thank you for the follow. I didn't get a notification for that. Appreciate it. Where was I? Oh yeah, it's kind of common sensey to an extent if you just think back on it, of like when you're in school, if there was a subject or a thing that you excelled at, it was probably because, I think my dog just woke himself up. It's probably because you were passionate about it. And if you're passionate about it, you're probably releasing dopamine while you're learning because you're fascinated with it. You enjoy it. And it accelerates that process, accelerates and solidifies the information you're learning because you enjoy it, because you're passionate about it. So if you were able to find a way to be passionate about everything that you need to learn, like, I know unfortunately in school, with the way our system is, you have to learn things you don't feel are important, and in some regards won't be ever after you learn it, like cursive. Like, I remember, I don't know if they still do. You know, I haven't been to school, like grade school, in a long time. But all throughout grade school, up until high school, really, up until the end of high school, it's like, you got to learn cursive. You got to learn cursive. Cursive is going to be the rest of your life. Cursive. Man, I maybe write cursive. If I have like a Mother's Day card, I'll write "Love your son" in cursive because it looks fancy. That's the extent of my 5, 6, 7 years of being told cursive is the end all be all of writing. Or my name, my signature. Yeah. Outside of that, it's like, come on. But again, the fascinating thing is, if you're able to find a way to release dopamine, to reward yourself, whatever the case may be, while studying or for the purposes of learning, you'll be much better off. Another sidebar, just because I feel like rambling. And I don't think this is a HIPAA violation because I'm not naming names or anything. And it's not even necessarily, I don't even have to say particularly client-based. But, you know, my previous job, I worked with neurodivergent children. Children on autistic spectrum disorder. And, you know, severe ADHD is part of that. You are, it's now considered you are autistic, or you have neurodivergency if you have severe ADHD. Because the reason it becomes a disorder is, again, because it impairs or detriments your life. Like, you're not able to, according to our societal definitions, have a healthy, normal life because of this thing. But he was, we'll just, instead of he, she, we'll just say this fake client that I could potentially have. It's like they have a superpower. I would try to, talk to whoever about that. While a kid with severe ADHD might not learn all things, or might have a severe adversity to learning information they do not care about at all. And I mean tantrums, frustration, mental blocks, all of that on any topic that they were not interested in. The things that they were interested in, oh my God. They could tell you the most intricate detail on whatever topic that they were fixated on. And in a very educated and articulate way. And sometimes very enthusiastic way. And it's like, that's a superpower. Like, they're releasing so much dopamine in doing the things that fascinate them that their body isn't regulating that dopamine release as much as, I guess, a typical brain would. That they have such an advantage when it comes to learning things that they're passionate about that us normies don't have. And that fascinates me. And that goes along the lines of, like, finding ways to increase your dopamine while you're learning things you like. And, if you're in school, learning things you don't like, but you have to pass. These kids that I've worked with, the amount of knowledge and the how rapidly they could learn that knowledge because of their brain's wiring and how much they just are so fixated and passionate about it. It was fascinating to see. And they also have less restriction on, like, what their face should look like and how contained they should be. They just, in some ways, live their life just freely because they don't have these inhibitors to certain extents. And, I had a client that was heavily addicted to video games. Heavily addicted to video games. Super cool kid. And again, when it came to video games, designing video games, whatever age he was, he could absorb so much more knowledge. Like, he could have... You're heavily addicted to video games? Like, he started playing Magic the Gathering, right? If I looked at Magic the Gathering, it would probably take me a while to have even a base foundation and understanding of how to play the game in its full form. I could stick to, like, original rules or whatever the case may be. I don't know. You would know about that terminology and stuff. But at first, he was into Pokemon cards, and he still, to my knowledge, I mean, I haven't talked to him in a while, but he still is. And he could build a deck like this and be like, well, you want this and this and this and this and this and this because this complements this, and then this goes into this, and then you can have this never-ending deck, and then this happens, and this happens, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, shit, okay, whoa, it is Pokemon, dude. I didn't know it's that crazy. And he started getting into Magic the Gathering. I pilot a deck that requires me to literally process them so many times. That's funny. He got into Magic the Gathering, and within, like, I saw this kid, a couple times a week, and let's just say on a Monday, he was like, I want to get into Magic the Gathering. I was like, okay. Well, he was under pretty strict no YouTube. Like his parents were trying to wean him off because he was like actually addicted. Like he like full tantrums, couldn't focus, couldn't do anything, would stop eating if he wasn't able to play his video games. And so I kind of like to reward him. Was like, all right, if we do this, we do some homework, we do some this, then don't tell your parents. Although I talk to his parents, like about it, because I'm not gonna go behind their back type thing. And we can watch a few videos on like Magic the Gathering and deck building, or like how the game's played. And we'll just say that happened Monday, and we'll say I would see him Monday, Wednesday. That Wednesday, 2 days later, he had a deck built, a custom deck built, and he's teaching me like all the intricacies of Magic the Gathering. That's just going way over my head, but in literally just 1 day of limited resources. His parents were like, you only have 30 minutes a day to go on YouTube and to go on the internet, and that's only if you finish your homework and if you do this and if you do that. So it's like this kid with limited resources and availability was able to just go full tilt into learning this as quickly as he could, to a point that my normal pea brain just couldn't do. And it's like that's fascinating to me. And it's remarkable as well. Like, to encourage this kid, I'm like, you have a superpower, my dude. Like, you can learn faster than maybe not like theoretically anybody else of like the whole world, but the objective anybody, because of how your brain's wired. And if he utilizes that for like successful reasons, like there's no limit to where that kid could go. But where we stand societally and educationally, the core requirements and blah blah blah, he's gonna struggle. And grade wise, you might be like, that kid's not too smart. It's like, no, the kid's honestly like a savant with things he wants and is interested in. It's just we force upon interests, or we discourage those interests because we're like, that's not reasonable, that's not this, that's not that. Gotta love Western society, right? But yeah, to stay on topic with dopamine, that kid, you could just the physical manifestation of dopamine, when even just watching someone else play a video game, his face brightened up like the biggest smile just watching someone play a video game. And it's like, you can just like, again, the physical manifestation of release of dopamine is just, he'll be upset, and then as soon as someone's playing a video game, it's just, and he's just fixated. Like, he just keeps a smile on his face for like that entire duration. Like, it's impressive. Like my cheeks would get tired. So to keep on track to some extent, dopamine, when it comes to learning and overcoming adversities, hurdles, to finding joy in the process of a goal, it's just so important. And if you can find ways to trick your brain into releasing dopamine, short of saying I'm going to study and do some illicits, short of that, then do that. Find these ways to trick your brain into enjoying things that you typically don't enjoy, and in turn create your own superpower of learning. For me, in most regards, that's like psychology, and that's acting. Like, when I'm learning about things, whether I'm trying to get better performance in acting or just learning other people's methods for acting, or psychology, like psychological information of why people do what they do and what this study shows, what that study shows. Like, I love that shit. I eat that shit up. Like, it's not studying to me. It's just learning. It's just getting, like, enjoyment. And to kind of connect that with 2 weeks ago, motivation and goal, like directional stuff, find whatever that is for you. And maybe that could help direct you in a way of where you want to go with your life and your career and stuff. Find the thing that when you start learning about it, you don't even think of it as a chore or as like, oh, I have to learn this. You're like, oh, I can't, like, give me more. Find that hunger, whatever it is for you. But yeah, does anybody have anything else that they would like to talk about, or is there anything in particular that next week they would like to talk about? There's a strong potential. I will be starting a job, so I can finally start making money again. And I don't know what those hours are going to be. I don't know when I would start. It might be as early as as Monday. If my work hours interfere with the Thursday sessions, I doubt I would be like a double, working the entirety of the day. So just know that the hours of Therapeutic Thursday might change in the coming future, like next week. But throughout my stream, I'll announce it. And as always, I'm going to be posting these on the YouTubes. It's going to be on YouTube. So if you ever miss, an episode, a topic of discussion, whatever, or if you end up showing up late, whatever the case may be, here's my shameless plug, although it's it is what it is. But here's the YouTube channel. You just go to playlists, Therapeutic Thursday. Every week I'll be posting them, and we'll go back, and if you have something about that episode that you want to know more about, or maybe again have conversation about in the next week, comment on there. If you're live, comment live. We'll get a new topic, we'll get a new discussion going. But if nobody has anything else they want to add at the moment, if nobody has any questions, anything they want to talk about, then we are reaching near that 2-hour mark. So just a quick little recap. Today we talked about dopamine and how to increase it and maybe try to find a little joy in your life again. We talked about the mesolimbic, mesocortical, megastriatal pathway. I'm butchering that word, but it is what it is. We talked about the psychological perspective, the cognitive perspective, and then just some practical tips to help boost your dopamine. Listen to music, cold showers, social interaction, sunlight exposure, learning new sets of skills, probiotics, massage therapy, gratitude practice, mindful eating, and visualization and positive thinking. There are many others. The typical ones that are across all things pretty much when it comes to serotonin, anxiety, cortisol, GABA, everything. I refrain from going into them because we've gone into them on almost every episode, but it's exercise, it's diet, it's sleep, it's meditation. To some extent, mindfulness or meditation, those are the 3 to 4 constants just relating to mental, physiological, and physical health in general. But I wanted to kind of stray away, give some new, more specific things. So yes, that's the listening to music, cold shower, social interaction, etc. But again, if no one has anything else at the moment, please feel free to comment either now or on the YouTube video of if there's something you would like to talk about next week. I'll develop a little itinerary. We'll talk about that next week. In closing, the idea of this is going to sound like the introduction. The idea of this is to just develop and build a community in which on Thursdays, between whatever hours end up being the finalized hours, or temporary finalized hours, the tentative ones, whatever's going on in that week, that month, you can just be like, you know what, at least on Thursday I have a place where I can just talk freely. I can talk about it. I can ask for some insight or just conversation, and just air things out. Because again, internalizing isn't nearly as strong of a healer, of a growth tool, of anything, than expressing it, whether it's written expression, verbal expression, conversation, whatever. That is what really helps you move forward with your life. Or feel better about situations. Internalizing it, intellectualizing it, it has its place, but it rarely works in the way that you want it to. So this segment, this session is designed for free association, free speech, talk about things, discourse. You can either, again, just ask me specifically if you only want me talking about whatever it is going on, or you can open it up to chat and we can all have a conversation. People can talk about their experiences with something that you're going through. That's the idea. Until we get to that point where I have a community, large enough, whatever that looks like, but large enough to where that is the session, then until that point, we're just going to have these conversations. I'm going to pick a topic, or chat is going to pick a topic. We're going to spend an hour, 2 hours discussing that topic, whether it's how you learn, early development. We've talked about anxiety. We've talked about depression. We've talked about motivating yourself and what lack of motivation looks like and what lack of motivation is. There's almost no psychological topic that I'm not willing to talk about and do research on if I don't know, and at least on a base level talk about it. So that's where we're at right now in this time of our community. But again, eventually it'll turn into just I turn the stream on and we're just talking. We're all talking to each other. I don't need to have these bulletin points that I've created, and talking points and TED Talk lecture podcast style. That's the dream. That's the goal. And that's the idea. So this in no way is a replacement for therapy. This is, legally, this is nothing in terms of me diagnosing. This is nothing in terms of, you say you have depression and I say, we'll do this protocol. This is all anecdotes. This is all personal experiences. This is all research. But it's never diagnosis and never a giving of protocol or a giving of a prescription, so to say. My brain's dead. There's a better terminology for that. If you do find yourself in a severe situation, a chronic situation, a disorder, anything like that, it is obviously very recommended. Go seek professional help. While places like this and other people's, therapy, whatever, hopefully not therapy, but therapeutic, mental health type communities are a good tool, a good way to decompress. They're not a cure, if there is such a thing. Seek professional help. There are many resources out there. In about 3 years, maybe come to me, although I don't know how that relationship works legally. But yeah. Subscription. Where's the word I was looking for? Not subscription. Oh boy. Oh nub. But yeah. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. And if anybody on YouTube is watching or listening, I appreciate that as well. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, whatever. I'll be posting these every Thursday. We've been pretty consistent for 6 or 7 weeks now, I want to say. And we're going to just keep it going. Hopefully build that community up. And yeah. So thank you again. I guess I'm going to end it here. And we'll be back next week, next Thursday. Ideally, about the same time, 3 p.m. Pacific time to 5 p.m. Pacific time. Start a little bit later because I have that interview. But that's the idea. That's the ideal time. And hopefully I'll see you guys next week. And if not live, in the next week's YouTube video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day. Adios.